Hey, thanks for joining me once again. It's time for me to go over the final volume of my fan comic that I've been working on for years at this point. It's called Masters End. It's a He-Man Masters of the Universe fan comic that I have been working on for years and years. This is volume 6. It's a thick book, as you can see. It's 120 something pages in this one. This is just a project that I started kind of on a whim years ago. I'm a child of the 80s, and so I grew up on all the classic 80s cartoons, and He-Man was one of my favorites. It wasn't my absolute most favorite. That was Transformers. And then number 2 and 3 is probably going to be Thundercats and then He-Man. So I tell people that, and they're kind of surprised, like, why would I spend so much time doing a fan comic that I can never own or do anything with, and it's not even like my favorite animated TV show property? The answer to that is I just started coming up with story ideas, and I just kept building on it in my head, and I really liked kind of the ideas that I was coming up with. And one day I was just like, just draw it. Just go for it. Just make it. I'm not going to make any other comics for anybody else. You know, I had done a bunch of work for some very small publishers, and it was all rewarding stuff, and I learned things, and I networked working with all these small publishers and friends and stuff like that. But I'm like, if I'm going to make comics, if I'm going to draw comics that no one's going to see, I want to draw one that I want to see. So I just decided, I'm like, I'm just going to draw this He-Man fan comic. And the intention for me was that I'm going to use it as a training ground. I used the best paper, like real comic book paper. And that you think that wouldn't be a big deal. But when I started this a long time ago, volume 1. And I didn't want to waste my good sheets of paper. And so I wouldn't draw comics on the nice Bristol board paper unless I really, really meant it for something important. But I'm like, I'm going to train myself to do the best work I can. So I use the best paper, the best pencils, the best ink. I'm going to make this look as good as I can possibly do it. And so I just got started. And so, like I said, this is volume 6. Let me set it aside. Let me show you volumes 1 through 3 first. That's these ones right here. There are videos on my channel of all of these. My brother, he actually kind of did a read through and kind of a commentary on book 1. And then I've done personally little videos on all of these volumes. So if you want to kind of see in detail what goes on inside them, there are videos on my channel. Just search out Masters End. You should be able to find it really easy. But to give you a basic idea of the story, I thought I'd recap really quick what happened in each volume before we get to number 6. But just to lay them out, there's volumes 1, just got He-Man's sword, and then volume 2, it's got She-Ra's sword. Volume 3, you can see, if you're a guy who recognizes these designs, you can see that some other 80s property shows up. And volumes 1 through 3 here, they're kind of one self-contained story. And this is kind of the original idea that I come up with that I wanted to draw. The original idea that I come up with years ago, I'm talking 15 to 20 years ago is when I come up with the original idea for this Masters of the Universe fan comic, and then I just eventually started making it. And the original idea was just what happens in volume 1 here, which is, again, it's 3 24-page comics is what's in this first collection. So these are all basically one self-contained story. And I thought that I'd be done, but then I had so many other story elements in motion that I'm like, I've just got to keep going. There's more I want to tell, and I kept coming up with more and more ideas. So I'm like, oh man, I guess I have to keep going. So as a result, these here are volumes 4, 5, and 6. So it's quite the pile. And again, each one of these is a thick book. These are not thin things. It's not a 24-page comic. Each one is like a graphic novel. So altogether, it's quite the mountain of work. And I'm pretty proud of it. It's by no means perfect. Nothing is. But, you know, it's there. I created it. It exists. So just to give, for anyone who doesn't know, and this is maybe your first kind of exposure, you know, if you're on my channel and you hear me talking about comics all the time, and, you know, giving my opinions on art and story and what works and what doesn't, well, I want you to know that I do make my own stuff. I do draw. I do write. For better or worse, whether I suck or I'm okay, who knows? I do make these things. And like I said, just to give a brief overview on what happens, the basic premise of my Master's End comic is taking the original 80s cartoon. That's what this whole series is based on. It's not based on the original comics or any of the other animated series or anything. It's only based on the only version of He-Man that I give a shit about, which is the one that I watched as a kid, which is the Filmation 80s cartoon. And my idea was to do a story that was the equivalent of the Transformers animated movie from 86, I think it is. I grew up watching the Transformers on TV, very lighthearted, easygoing show. And then as a kid, you go into that movie and suddenly it's very violent, very dangerous. There was consequences, characters died, and the entire kind of premise moved forward, as opposed to resetting to status quo at the end of every episode of the cartoon series. That was my intention for this Master's End. So it's basically the final battle between He-Man and Skeletor, and then the consequences of what follow that battle. And so that's what issue 1 is. And again, I've gone over this. It's basically Skeletor is frustrated because he hasn't defeated He-Man, and his own minions have decided that he's failed, so they're going to take over. And this pisses Skeletor off so much that he kills them all and vanishes into space and is gone for a long time. And when he shows back up, he just appears to the heroes and starts killing everybody. And so the final battle between He-Man and Skeletor takes place. And again, the basic premise is that Skeletor visited basically, I guess, the multiverse, and he brought back with him weapons from other parts of the universe, including Voltron, to see there. So basically Skeletor just, attacks He-Man and Grayskull, and so there's a big fight. Skeletor also stole the Eye of Thundera from the Thundercats. And so my brother, John, he jumped in and helped me draw parts of this. And so chapter 2 is drawn by him, which shows Skeletor attacking the Thundercats' homeworld. So that's all in there. It's a great action comic, all kinds of cool stuff that happens in there. And then chapter 3 is the final wrap-up where He-Man and Skeletor have their final fight, and it's brutal. Skeletor just slaughters people left and right and pushes He-Man past the point of no return. He freaks out on Skeletor because Skeletor killed the sorceress. So Skeletor unloads with a high-power energy laser blast, which melts the skin off He-Man's body. But He-Man rips Skeletor's heart out of his body, killing him. And now we're just in the aftermath. Basically, He-Man, he's a scarred version of himself, and he's just pissed off at himself that he didn't solve the problem of Skeletor years ago when he could have, over and over. And so Skeletor basically took it to a level of destruction that He-Man never thought possible, and now everyone's paid the price. That's basically the premise. Volume 2 picks up where He-Man is this scarred, wounded warrior defending Grayskull. And so there's a bunch of story threads that are picked up. We resolve some things with Voltron. Lion-O from the Thundercats, his world was attacked, his friends were killed. So he comes to Eternia looking for the Eye of Thundera that Skeletor stole from him. So we're basically setting up a conflict with Lion-O and Skeletor. She-Ra, He-Man's sister, comes from her planet, which is in like another dimension, and she comes to offer help to her brother, but he doesn't want help. He's screaming at her, he's mad at her. So the whole premise of book 2 is how He-Man is decided that he's going to be proactive in taking out villains now. And so he, first, She-Ra goes to Snake Mountain to search it out to see if there's anybody still alive there. And we find that Skeletor has also brought back Quintessons from the Transformers universe. He's brought them back. His idea was to build war machines for him. And they've been trapped in Snake Mountain, but they got out. And this is just at the same time when She-Ra comes to visit. So she has to fight her way out. She runs into Trapjaw. Trapjaw was thought to be killed by Skeletor in issue 1, but he's not dead. He actually saves her from the Quintessons. And they have a little bit of a, like, what the fuck are you saving me for? Why? What's going on? How come you're saving my life? You're a bad guy. And he's like, dude, I gave everything up. After He-Man and Skeletor's final battle, Trapjaw was like, I just discovered that kind of raw power could just kill any of us. He's like, you know what, I'm done. He's basically done being a bad guy. This is the start of me turning Trapjaw into a hero, which a lot of people probably don't agree with, but I tried to set up a reason for it. And Trapjaw and She-Ra, this is kind of their first interaction, and they're kind of, back and forth relationship through the whole series is something I kind of had a lot of fun with. But He-Man goes to She-Ra's world and basically slaughters all the villains that are on her planet. If you ever watched the She-Ra animated show, he just rips them apart, just destroys them all, kills Hordak. He-Man's point of doing this is so that his sister never suffers the fate that he went through. But, heroes don't slaughter their enemies indiscriminately, so this just destroys She-Ra. It just rocks her to her core. And He-Man comes home, and he's brought the severed head of Hordak back to Grayskull, and he's just thinking, has he lost his soul? Has he lost his mind? He's not even a hero anymore. He's just lying on the ground after the battle. He's been stabbed, poisoned, punched, laser blasted, lit on fire, and he just wants to die because of all the horrible things that have happened. But it ends with an ominous Lion-O who's riding Battle Cat outside of Grayskull. So that's the end of book 2. Set that aside. Book 3, the first half of it is drawn by my brother, and it's basically the battle of Lion-O and He-Man. It's a wrap-up of that because Lion-O doesn't know who He-Man is. All he knows is that someone showed up from this world, went to Lion-O's world, and took the Eye of Thundera. And so he's here to get it back. And then he finds this guy who's just this burned corpse of a figure. And a fight ensues. And so my brother drew this epic, huge story of this big final battle between Lion-O and He-Man. And I threw in a couple of splash page battle scenes here. This is my artwork. This is kind of an homage to the cover of X-Force #2 by Liefeld. This is a homage to an issue of Wolverine where Wolverine was fighting Sabretooth. And then this one is a Jim Lee homage, Uncanny X-Men with Wolverine jumping, fighting the Mandarin. And but yeah, big battle between He-Man and Lion-O, wrapping up their story arc. And it's a pretty epic thing. My brother did an awesome job on it. But eventually, Lion-O kind of gets his senses about him. He gets the Eye of Thundera back, and he uses its power to see He-Man as he should be, not as he is. So Lion-O's like, all right, I understand everything you've gone through. Battle's over. So He-Man and Lion-O kind of converse. They talk back and forth. And basically, He-Man asks Lion-O to take Cringer, to take Battle Cat back to his world with him, because He-Man's not in any place to care for Cringer anymore. So Cringer, in my fan comic, goes home with Lion-O. The big cat goes with the cat people. It's sad. And then the rest of the book of Volume 3 is basically He-Man trying to find a way to forgive himself for every horrible thing that's happened and everything he feels that he allowed to happen. His father comes to speak to him. Eventually, the sorceress who was killed horrifically in book 1 kind of appears from the afterlife and tells Adam that he needs to forgive himself. It's time to move on. Oh, also Teela, who was killed, she's just been kind of in the afterlife, and she's been reborn as the new sorceress of Grayskull. So the original sorceress goes away into the afterlife. Teela is reborn as the sorceress, and she's like, we need to heal you. We need to help you get past this torturous life you're letting yourself live in. You're living with these scars and these horrible wounds. You need to let it go. So he goes into these waters that heal him, and his body's reborn. He's reinvigorated. And then it's here where Teela joins him in the pool. And she expresses her love for him. They've always been kind of a thing. And so they're going to get together. So, she takes everything off and, says, I want to be with you. Let's stand together. Let's be, who we should be. And so it's just a lot of conversation back and forth about how it's hard for him to forgive himself. He feels guilty for everything that happened. But it's time to move into the future. It's time to forgive ourselves and move along and be who we're supposed to be. So she's the sorceress. They're going to go back to the royal palace. They've got to go see their families and just kind of get everything kind of back to a point where the story can continue. So He-Man comes back and sees his parents for the first time in years. They visit the grave sites of people who have died. It's very much indicated that He-Man is he's suffering he might be physically healed, but the mental scars are still there, and he's telling himself that he can get through this. And then it ends with He-Man and Sorceress Teela getting with She-Ra and saying that they want to get rid of Snake Mountain. There's no more villains left. They've basically defeated all of them. But Snake Mountain is a symbol of evil, and they want to blow it up. And She-Ra's she's not on board with this idea, but she's like, I guess I don't have any choice, so I'll come with you to support you. But it ends with the Snake Mountain being blown to the ground, He-Man and Teela looking on at, blowing up Snake Mountain, and She-Ra just looking along ominously like, who are these people, and is this what our future needs to hold? It goes and shows how Lion-O rejoins the Thundercats. They brought Cringer, and everyone think that's awesome, and the Thundercats are going to continue on into the future. And then we end on this story where there's this mysterious guy in a cloak talking on a communicator. He's part of this team that are helping these people relocate from one village to another. And this mysterious figure is a merman, comes out of the water, and he's like, I finally found you. And so we discovered that the mysterious guy is Trapjaw, who we haven't seen since the middle of book 1. So Merman has just been hiding this whole time, and he's like, well, now that all that shit's done, me and you, Trapjaw, we can get together. We can be a formidable force. We can take over Eternia. Trapjaw says, go fuck yourself. I have given this life up. I have relocated to the other side of Eternia. I'm just existing as a hired strongman, just hired muscle. Get lost. And Merman can't believe that Trapjaw has lost his nerve. He calls him a pussy. Trapjaw tells him to get lost, and then Merman's final words are that I'll take over Eternia, and when I'm done, I'll come back and find you and take you out too. And so Trapjaw, his arm, I changed it around so it's now a metal arm that can transform into the weapons he needs. And so Trapjaw just blows away Merman, just to eliminate the threat right then and there. He's not going to take this crap anymore. Blows away Merman, and we see that the guy that Trapjaw was talking to a few pages ago is actually Fisto. Fisto himself has formed a team of hired muscle that Trapjaw has joined, and they're kind of working together, and the entire book ends with Merman's dead body falling into the water. The end. So that is the end of volumes 1 through 3. Again, that was kind of a self-contained story in and of itself that sort of wrapped up the He-Man story. And but as I got going, I kept thinking the stories of Trapjaw, and what about all the other characters in the world? What about She-Ra? Because the whole point with She-Ra is that her brother suffered a horrible traumatic event. Should he be allowed to keep his powers? He's dangerous. He's murdered people. So that's where this story picks up, where She-Ra herself is summoning the spirit of Grayskull, asking him to remove He-Man's powers. He shouldn't have them. He's too dangerous. And the spirit of Grayskull basically denies her, says, no, He-Man's earned his right to have his powers. You guys will need each other. There are challenges to come. And so she was very upset. And then the story starts with this random figure running through the night in the rain, undressed, and she goes to someone's door, and we find out that she's lost her memory. She doesn't know who she is, and she's looking for help. Cut back to He-Man. This is basically a dream sequence where he's slaughtering Teela. He's killing people and kills Teela. So I drew this really violent kind of scene, but he basically comes back to, he wakes up, and it's just to show that He-Man is suffering the mental kind of anguish of all the horrible things that have happened. And so from here, the story joins Fisto and Trapjaw, and they have Jitsu and Strongarm, 4 characters that are in the original show. Jitsu and Strongarm are only ever seen in one episode. Fisto was seen as several times, and Trapjaw, obviously we all know who he is, but basically Fisto has formed a team of hired muscle of former villains just doing jobs, and that's the whole gag. And so the stories go on about these guys. Trapjaw had some things going on that he was doing. It wasn't working out. Trapjaw's not sure why he's doing these things that he's doing. He's supposed to be a villain, and Fisto explains to him, like, the world has changed. You've decided to give up your evil ways. You're with us. And so they've just kind of decided to stay together as a team called the Gauntlets. And so I kind of got interested in the story of these guys, the Gauntlets, these former villains. And so there's more stories with He-Man and Teela. They decide to, with the help of the Voltron robots, take out Horde Prime. He's the main villain of She-Ra's universe, so that thing is taken care of. And then we get back into the story of Fisto and the Gauntlets and just other characters that have been introduced. Again, I mean, this is going way longer than I intended to, just as a recap. But we're just kind of getting to know all these characters. The mysterious girl who we discovered at the beginning, running through the rain, she doesn't have any memories, and so she doesn't know who she is. She went and explored Snake Mountain, and she discovered the body of Evil Lyn and took her helmet. But then, you know, now she's got that thing in her possession. So we're like, is this helmet of Evil Lyn going to influence this girl without a memory? The Gauntlets, the team, they're hanging out in a tavern, and She-Ra comes to visit them. And she was basically checking up on Trapjaw, because Trapjaw gave his word to her way back when that he's given up his evil ways. So she was checking up on him. They have a conversation back and forth. And She-Ra explains to Fisto that she's kind of sad, way more than anybody kind of realizes, because of everything that's happened. Her brother, who's lost his mind, it seemed like, but he won't talk with her. She doesn't trust her brother anymore. She doesn't trust Teela because she was dead. Now she's back from the afterlife. Now she's the sorceress. So She-Ra is like the one pure hero left with infinite superpowers, and she's alone. And so there's I developed this kind of tender kind of friendship moment between Fisto and She-Ra. He gives her a hug. He comforts her. He says, you've got a lot to deal with. You've got powers and responsibilities that no one else can understand. We're here. You know, I'm here if you need anything. And so there's a tender moment between them, which will build into something else. And then I end the story with finding out that Strongarm has actually been pretending the whole time, and he's sick of pretending to be a good guy. He just wants to slaughter and be evil. So Trapjaw has to fight him. Jitsu jumps in there. He almost gets his head crushed and killed. So the gauntlets, Fisto, Jitsu, and Trapjaw have to take out Trapjaw. They have to just use their combined strength to knock his ass out. And they find out that inside his mask, because it's always been assumed that he's a human guy in a body armor outfit, but he's basically just a robot. He's just a machine with a human mind in this computer brain. And they're like, well, who the fuck is this guy then? They don't know anything about this guy. They figured out, they kind of discovered they've all been kind of tricked. They thought he was just a guy trying to go good, but he's actually a machine, and he just tried to kill them all. So that is the end of issue 4. Book 4, I should say. Book 5, quite thick. It's a homage cover to Mark Silvestri, and then this is the gauntlets, Fisto, Jitsu, Trapjaw, Strong Arm. You probably recognize the basic layout from a particular album cover. But the story is basically building towards, there was set up in issue 4 a little bit, in issue 5 here, that there's a mysterious force out there plotting against Eternia specifically. It's the girl who helped, the girl who showed up and lost her mind. Her name is Eve. She found the helmet of Evil Lyn. The woman who took her in, we discovered that she's secretly plotting against everybody like a witch. And meanwhile, Eve, she travels to Grayskull and meets up with Teela and tries to figure out, she explains, like, I have no memories of who I am. And what Teela basically discovers is that Eve is Evil Lyn, who's been reborn from the afterlife with no memory. And this is shocking. This is not something that should be possible. So the evil witch who's plotting against them, she fights Jitsu. She's trying to get information out of him, and he tries to kill her. She snaps his arm, so he does a killing blow to her neck, but it doesn't take her down. And so she lights him on fire, and so he's almost killed. So all the heroes. So you got She-Ra joins up with Fisto, Trapjaw, and they bring Jitsu's burned body, and they come to Grayskull to put him in those waters that heal, the same ones that did that for He-Man. And so the whole basic premise is that all the heroes get together. He-Man joins up. So now we've basically got a team of 8 people. And they all realize that there's some kind of evil, secretive evil presence trying to kill them all, trying to do something that no one knows exactly what. And so the gauntlets, Fisto, Trapjaw, Jitsu, and Strongarm have to join forces with He-Man, She-Ra, Teela, and the mysterious newcomer Eve. So it's 8 of them, and they have to go back to the other part of the planet where they think this evil witch is at, and they start searching for her, because they're just trying to figure out what the mystery is. Who is this person that's trying to kill us? What is this sense of ominous evil that's coming? As the story goes on, I kept developing the story between She-Ra and Fisto. He's looking out for her. She's so hyper-focused on her own kind of responsibilities. He's like, you haven't slept or eaten for days. Come on, come back to my place. He cooks her a meal. He lets her rest. It's, again, just building kind of a friendship relationship between them. But basically, it all culminates into the 8 heroes find the mysterious woman, and it's revealed that it's actually Shadow Weaver, the witch from the She-Ra animated show. And she was thought to be dead. I mean, she was basically exploded by He-Man and his sword in the previous book, in book 2. But she survived, and she is plotting the destruction of Eternia. She's out to kill everybody. So there's a really scary, ominous kind of vibe that's coming on. I kept developing, again, the relationship between Fisto and She-Ra. They sit down, they talk at length with each other, they share their thoughts, their feelings, And he kind of explains his past. Fisto never had any kind of past or backstory in the comics, so I gave him one. And, I'm basically hinting at the beginning of a relationship between these guys. And so Shadow Weaver, now that we know that it's her, she brings back Beastman from the afterlife. She takes a wolf and has it mutate as it's kind of imbued with the spirit of Beastman from hell. And Beastman is reborn. So as the story goes, it's all building to a final conflict. The heroes are together. They're still trying to figure out what's going on. They know that it's Shadow Weaver and it's bad. And then Shadow Weaver shows up and she unleashes these titans on Eternia, these giant monsters that have been in the show, to go and attack this big city. And so now our heroes have to fight these monsters. And that's where book 5 here kind of ends up, where the heroes are taking on these giant monsters. It's a pretty rough battle all around for everybody. And then it ends with, it looks like Teela, she's getting vaporized in fire. She-Ra, it looks like she's about to get swallowed whole by this water monster. At the end here, Eve, it's basically Evil-Lyn who's been reborn, as I kind of said earlier. She kind of reforms herself and she kind of takes control of her life and her existence and refuses and rejects evil and accepts good, and basically reforms herself into a new body and is basically with the good guys now. You'd have to read the books. Anyway, it ends with Beastman waiting to be unleashed on the heroes. So that is the end of book 5. And so that took way longer than I intended it to do a recap. But so I don't think I'll get through this entire book in one sitting. I might go through part of it and then break it up into chunks. But again, I just wanted to take the opportunity to show for the first time on my channel the final volume of my book. And I wanted to give some context to everything that's been going on. Starting out with the cover, it's an homage to this awesome cover to this issue of the Dark Phoenix Saga from Classic X-Men from, this is like 1989. Come up with this, like I saw that cover and eventually just occurred to me, I'm like, oh, this would be awesome. Instead of the Dark Phoenix, it's Shadow Weaver. And then you've got Strong Arm, Jitsu, Trapjaw, and She-Ra. No Fisto on the cover. We do have the back cover, which is an homage to a Liefeld cover, X-Force number 7, 8? The one that Mike Mignola drew. This is an homage to that. I penciled that, and then badass inker Chuck Gibson inked it for me, and then I got a guy to color it. This was almost going to be the cover to the book, but I was really kind of focused on, I felt the vibe of this one was just better. So as the story picks up, it starts out with Trapjaw, and most of the story is a narration from Trapjaw's inner thoughts, making a personal log. It's through his perspective, and he's come a long way. I mean, all the characterization I've built into him through those previous 5 volumes have shown him struggling with his former evil ways, struggling with his nature of what he used to be and what he's actually been turning into, and how he's done some noble things in the presence of all these heroes. So I'm trying to make the transition of Trapjaw from villain to hero be believable, and it's his personal log, and it's starting out with him talking about how he's had these horrible dreams of death and destruction, standing in the rain, but it's raining blood. It's a horrifying thing that freaks him out, but he feels weak for having these dreams. He feels like a coward. He remembers that he used to be a strong, feared villain, but now he feels fear himself, but it's because he's grown as a character. And like I was saying, in the last book, it was left at the end where all these heroes were fighting these giant monsters. And it left, they hadn't defeated them yet. So we have to wrap up that fight, those battles. So He-Man's fighting a giant stone monster. She-Ra's fighting this giant sea monster. Teela's fighting this giant monster made of flame. And then Eve, who's been reborn, it was Evil Lynn, but now she's kind of on the good guys. She's fighting this demon centaur monster, Mulcrum from the cartoon. And Beastman, he's reborn, and his claws and his teeth have been coated in this impenetrable, super strong metal so that he's even more dangerous. That's what's going on there. And but the Titans, the monsters that the heroes are fighting, they're like burning this village to the ground. So the less powerful heroes, Fisto, Jitsu, Strongarm, they can't take on these giant Titan gods, so they're just trying to rescue people, just save regular people, while the more powerful heroes take on these giant Titan monsters. This scene is where Teela, as the sorceress, is fighting this giant flame monster called the Spirit of Evil, and he basically vaporizes her down to a skeleton, but she comes back, awakens in the afterlife. She sees the spirit of her mother, and her mother imbues her with the full power of Grayskull, and so Teela is reborn again with the full power of Grayskull. It's supposed to be kind of a Jean Grey Phoenix homage here, but she's super strong. She basically absorbs the Spirit of Evil into a little tiny spark, defeated him. Back with He-Man here, he's taken on this giant stone monster, and He-Man just unleashes his strength and just pummels this thing, just shreds this monster to the ground and defeats it. So then Teela shows up, and He-Man's like, dude, you've changed again. She's like, yeah, I know, but we're together. We're alive. As long as we're together, there's nothing we can't defeat. And it's like, now let's go find She-Ra. I'm sure she needs help. So we cut back to She-Ra, and Trapjaw, he was supposed to stay with Fisto and the other team rescuing people in the city, but Teela needs help. She-Ra needs help. So he's using his rocket pack to blast over there. He sees She-Ra taking on this monster, so he just unloads with his laser arm, shooting it in the face. And She-Ra's like, you're not supposed to be here. This is too much for you. And this is a part where it was interjecting some character moments that were interesting to me, where she was trying to be a good guy. She doesn't want to kill this giant monster. She doesn't want to kill. That's the whole point of a hero, right? We don't kill, especially if this is just basically a giant animal. Trapjaw's being practical. He's like, you're way stronger than this thing. He's no match for you. Put him down. And she's like, I can't kill him. So he lets her have it. He's like, are you kidding me? This monster has sent massive floodwaters into the city. People are drowning to death while you're wrestling with your morality. He says, stop this fucking monster before more people die. And while they're having this little conversation amongst themselves, the monster, they weren't paying attention to it, so he comes down to slam his hand down. So Trapjaw throws up a force field to kind of protect both of them. And She-Ra's like, no, get out of the way. You can't. And then too late, the giant monster's hand slams down on Trapjaw's head. Blood explodes out of his face, his eyes, his nose, his mouth. You see his jaw is just shredded. It slams down hard. Boom. This giant monster just smashes them like bugs. Of course, this doesn't hurt She-Ra because she's basically Wonder Woman. Punches him away and looks down at Trapjaw. He's like flattened into the ground. His robotic arm is destroyed. There's blood everywhere. Like, this guy's dead. This pisses off She-Ra. She'd lost her sword, so she, holds out her hand, and it comes to her hand. And then, in this fit of kind of anger, uses her sword, blasts a hole through the monster, kills it, drops it down. She's put it down finally. And she drops to her knees, just horrified by what she's done. He-Man and Teela show up, and they're like, are you okay? She's like, no, I'm not okay. And they look over at Trapjaw's body. Again, a bloody mess, sparking technology from his damaged mechanical components. And they're like, his heartbeat's fading. He's going to die. And so She-Ra, the first episode she was ever introduced in, she was shown to have these powers to touch and heal by hand. But it's never been tested to a really severe degree. So she's like, I don't know, maybe I can do this. So she gets down, she puts her hands on Trapjaw, and she basically prays to God in a way. She says, please let this work. Please, God, for the honor of Grayskull, let this work. Don't let him die. Don't let it be this way. Because Trapjaw, at this point in the story, has been a cantankerous, argumentative fucking asshole. But when it comes time to fight, he backed up the heroes every step of the way and put his life on the line. He doesn't like to sit around and wait. He doesn't like having nothing to do. But when it's time to be in action, he stepped up every step of the way, and he basically sacrificed his life trying to protect She-Ra. So that's kind of the interesting kind of dichotomy I was trying to get with the character. And they're like, he deserves to live. And so Teela and He-Man are like, can She-Ra's powers do this? Like, she doesn't have this ability, does she? And suddenly Trapjaw, his eyes pop open. He jerks awake. He's like, oh, God, get back, get back. So he stands his ass up, reconnects his jaw, and he's like, yeah. He's like, all right, yeah, it looks like I blacked out for a minute. And she's like, yeah, you did, but thank you for your help. And so Trapjaw, now that he's back up, he looks on the dead body of the monster. He's like, yeah, it looks like you finally took my advice and stopped that thing. And she's like, yeah, I did. He's like, yeah, it took you long enough. She's like, I know, I'm sorry. He says, that impact messed me up, though. Good thing I'm tougher than you all give me credit for. Anyway, what are y'all standing around for? We got work to do. Let's go. So He-Man, She-Ra, and Teela stand there, and He-Man's like, he has no idea, none at all, that he was going to die. He was dead, and you just saved his life. And She-Ra says, it's fine. He doesn't need to know. He's had so much change in his existence, having the idea in his head that he died and that I brought him back. He doesn't need to deal with that. It's just not information he needs right now. So they just, Trapjaw was dead, but she saved his life. But he doesn't know that. He doesn't get that. But they're like, you know what? He deserves just to be alive. We don't need to let him know that we did this. It's fine. So they're like, all right, we got to get back to the city. The city's burning down. We cut back to Eve. She's fighting this demon monster, Mulcrum, who's undefeatable, this really scary monster. In the cartoon, he was a very scary monster. And Fisto and Jitsu have to dive down out of the way from the energy and the fire and destruction that they're putting out in their basically like magic battle. But Eve just gets into the creature's mind and basically shuts him down, puts him on the ground. He's dead. And they're like, holy shit, Eve, like, did you just do that? Are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay. Everything's okay. So the four of Teela, He-Man, She-Ra, and Trapjaw, they just kind of arrived on scene and kind of witnessed the end of that. They see that Eve has kind of ascended to a more powerful version of herself. And they're like, holy shit. Fisto himself, who's been developing a relationship with She-Ra, he can tell that she's disturbed, that she's not herself. The point is that she just killed a monster, and the destruction and everything that's going on is fucking up her kind of mindset. She's having a hard time, and he notices. So the team, they kind of put themselves together, they kind of regroup, and they're like, well, the city is still burning. We stopped the monsters, but the city's still burning. There are people that need our help. So all 8 of them charge into the burning city. They make it rain to put out the fires, and they just show them like just rescuing people, removing rubble, pulling people out from underneath collapsed buildings, just saving people. Fisto, he's saving someone right here, and while he's doing that, he hears somebody yell from behind him for help. So he charges over there, and there's this man and this woman. Fisto's like, what's going on? They're like, our child, our baby is in that building. It's burning. We can't get in there. So Fisto charges in there, busts his way through, right through the flames. After that, He-Man and She-Ra show up, and they're like, holy shit, Fisto went in there? God, he just threw himself into this burning building. So they're like, we have to go in there. And He-Man's like, the flames, I don't know if I could. It's indicated that He-Man, because he got burned in issue 1, book 1, he's still kind of afraid of flames. Who wouldn't be? But before they can do anything, boom, a giant crashing of debris, and they look on, and Fisto, coming out of the burning building and wrapped up in his arms, is the child. He saved it. And they give the baby back to the parents. And He-Man's like, dude, Fist, brother, good job. Like, holy shit, dude. That was incredible. And Fisto just kind of stands there silently, kind of frustrated. She-Ra comes up to him. She's like, Fisto, that was so brave. She's like, are you okay? He's like, I'm fine. Let's go. We aren't done. She's like, oh, okay. I wanted to tell you. And he just cuts her off. He's like, let's go. Like something's wrong with Fisto. So she kind of looks on in kind of sadness, like, oh, okay. So while that's going on, we cut to Eve, Jesus Christ, Shadow Weaver and Beastman. They're looking on from a high vantage point down at the ground of everything burning. And Beastman's like, when's my turn? They've defeated the giant monsters, but when's my turn? And she's like, soon. Very soon. This is the first page right here. I got to shout out. It's not the first page he did, but it's the first page in the book where Chuck Gibson, badass inker, he joined up. He kind of met me through my channel, and we talked and communicated back and forth. And he asked if he could throw in some help on some inks on some pages on my book. And I said, you bet your fucking ass. Chuck Gibson worked for Jim Lee, for Wildstorm Studios, for Image Comics, and he did a lot of other stuff, worked for CrossGen. He's really, really good. And he'd been kind of out of the game for a while and just decided he kind of wanted to get back into some art, and asked if he could join up with me. And so he inked, this is the first page in the book. It's not the first one he... God, I'm editing myself. Maybe it is the first page I gave. I can't remember, Chuck. What was the first page I gave you? No, it was this one. This is the first page, I believe. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that I have some digital ink assistance from Chuck Gibson, who worked for Image Comics. And if you don't think 16-year-old kid me would be like screaming like a little child, I mean, of course. So basically, the villains, Shadow Weaver, who started all this horrible stuff, all this destruction that's just happened, it's her. But she's like, yeah, the giant monsters, that was just step one. That was just part one. We're going to, there's more to come. So the story here is basically the heroes are just trying to provide relief to this entire city that had just been almost basically wiped out. They're trying to feed people. They rescued people. And while it's been going on for a long time, She-Ra comes back to Fist and asks him, she's like, you've been going for so long. Are you okay? And Fist is just kind of sad. He's like, I feel like if we would have tried harder, we could have saved more people. And she's like, you know, we did the best we could, but there's more going on with you. She says, did it have something to do with you rescuing that child? And he's like, no. He's like, I gotta go. He takes off and he leaves. And she's like, I'm just trying to, you know, he's been such a big help to her that she's trying to offer assistance back, and he's not hearing it. Something's wrong with him. So Sorceress Teela comes along and she says, hey, I kind of overheard. I'm sorry about all of that. And She-Ra, they kind of have a conflict here where She-Ra's like, look, Teela, I don't know you anymore. You were dead for a long time. You're back from the afterlife. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you are. You don't know me. I don't know you. Stay away. So She-Ra takes off and runs off and leaves. And He-Man kind of comes up to Teela and he's like, I heard that. I'm sorry about that. It's hard. We've all been through so many changes. It's going to be hard for everybody. So Teela hugs He-Man. She's like, you know, as long as we have each other, you know, we're okay. So I'm basically trying to set up that if you've read all previous 5 volumes, She-Ra has felt this ominous presence of something horrible that's going to happen. She's been saying it for all 5 books. Something terrible's coming. And she thinks that this is all this death and destruction and horribleness. And she's frustrated. She's angry. She doesn't trust her brother. She doesn't trust Teela. She doesn't know who to trust. But she's built up a relationship with Fist, like a friendship and a closeness. They've spent a lot of time talking. I'm basically trying to build like a romantic relationship between them. But now Fisto's got some kind of thing going on. He's frustrated. So we cut to him because all the immediate danger is over. Everything's kind of calmed down. So Fist goes off into the forest. He's taken his battle harness off the top of him. He's by this river. He's got some burn wounds on him from saving the kid. But he's just kind of quietly by himself. And he's standing up against a tree and he's just saying, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Just put it out of your mind. But She-Ra's found him. And she comes to him and she, you know, she catches up with him. She's like, I'm sorry. I hope it's okay that I followed you here. He's like, it's okay, of course. I just wasn't expecting anyone. I'm sorry for my behavior earlier. I was out of line. She says, you don't need to explain yourself. He says, I don't deserve your compassion. You're very kind. Because in this world, Fisto's like a C-grade hero. He's not super strong. He's not never been like this big amazing thing. And She-Ra is freaking Wonder Woman to He-Man, Superman. She's like this beautiful, all-powerful goddess that everyone just looks up to. But he's kind of like, there's a thing kind of forming between them. He just kind of doesn't believe it's possible. So she kind of like walks up to him. She kind of embraces him. She says, everything you've done today was incredible. You saved a child from burning to death. You risked your life for a complete stranger with no regard for your own safety. She says, you are brave, strong, fearless, passionate. I trust you with my life. I trust you with my everything, my heart, my soul, my body. So basically, she throws herself at him. She says, I want you right now. He's like, what? She's like, right now, we're surrounded by so much uncertainty and sadness and fear. You've been the only person that's been there for me. You made me feel safe, like everything will be okay. He's like, I don't know what to say. She's like, well, do you not want me? He's like, of course I do. From the moment I first met you. She's like, then take me now. Right here, right now. And so he stops her and he's like, well, before anything happens, this giant metal glove that I wear, he says, this thing's a permanent part of me. I can't take this thing off. It's just kind of weird. I know. He's like, I can't take it off. So without saying anything, she removes her weapons and everything else and stands there completely bare. She takes his big metal hand and she says, I doubt you could hurt me. And I know you can be gentle. So it's okay. So he takes his metal hand and puts it on her body and takes him. And then she says down here at the bottom, you don't need to be that gentle with me anyway. So, dirty girl. So, building up that relationship between them. So they're off in the forest doing that. We cut back to the rest of the characters after all the battle and everything. They're I show these scenes of these various characters, Trapjaw, Strongarm, Eve, kind of like putting themselves together and preparing for the next conflict. One of my favorite pages, Chuck Gibson inked this one here. Jitsu, I kind of skipped by it in the last issue, but he was gifted this liquid metal weapon from the sorceress that's kind of a mind-controlled liquid metal magical weapon, and he just has to learn how to use it. So he's taking this time to focus because it's a very, very difficult weapon to master. But Jitsu is this highly focused martial arts master. So he's here in like Zen mode, focusing, having it morph into different weapon shapes on his hands, having it spread across both his arms, this intense look on his face, showing that he is mastering this thing. And Chuck Gibson inked this page flawlessly. There's not one element on this page that I don't absolutely love. It's so good. It's everything that I wanted it to be, and it kind of redefined my kind of thoughts of how I want to illustrate this weapon. It's closer to what I wanted it to be than I could visually do it in pencil. He just nailed it. So he's over here focusing on how to learn to use this weapon for future conflict. Trapjaw has got himself and Strongarm put back together, and they're like, we just have to we don't know where Shadow Weaver is. We have to kind of just hang out and do our thing until the next conflict. Meanwhile, cut back to the night sky. We come back to Fisto and She-Ra. They're just hanging out in the forest, in a state of Adam and Eve-like bliss. And She-Ra's like, or Fisto says, well, that was unexpected to say the least. She says, I hope I didn't scare you throwing myself at you like that. And he's like, oh, is that what you call it? And she's like, hey, I just stopped worrying about keeping up appearances and being proper. I'm sorry if I took it too far. Again, these pages are all inked by Chuck Gibson. They all look fantastic. And so this is where I kind of get into I decide to kind of delve into some character moments where I make up some backstory for these characters that was not in the cartoon, because they either never discussed anything. With Fisto, he had no character, and I gave some backstory to She-Ra here. Basically, Fisto, he's talking Like, he's just kind of shocked that the daughter of the king, the princess of power, would look at him the way she does. And she says, you're just, you're just you don't give yourself enough credit, the things you do, the people you help. And she's saying how she's had this feeling inside her for forever now, ever since her brother's battle with Skeletor, that something horrible is going to happen. She says, you're the only one who's ever been concerned about me. She says, I have such big responsibilities. I never have a moment for myself. She says, I want to tell you something important. I have something to tell you. It's important. It's kind of a secret, but I hope it doesn't ruin the moment. And so Fisto says, I don't think anything could ruin this moment. She says, I don't either. I just want you to know, ever since I became She-Ra, I've never had a relationship. The time, the person, it was just never right. As She-Ra, I've never been with a man until now. You were the first. He's like, wait, what? So you've never been with a guy, with a man? And she says, well, as Adora, her human self, as a younger woman, yes, she has. But ever since she took the powers of She-Ra and having these godlike powers, they were always busy. They were always running, fighting Hordak. They were running, they were planning the rebellion and everybody. There was just no time. And she says there were one or two interested men, but it never happened. And she says I had to keep certain boundaries. So as She-Ra, she's never been with anybody physically. He's like, I don't know what to say. She says, I guess it just takes a special kind of man. So Fisto says, it's you who are special to share this with me. And he's like, I have something I want to share with you. It's important and it's not easy to hear. She says, you can tell me anything you want. So he says, you know about my past, the things I did for Skeletor. Fisto was introduced as a villain. And basically, so was Adora. She was working for Hordak. She was a bad guy. So they're both former villains. So she's like, yeah, I have a similar past. So this is where I interject major character backstory into Fisto that I made up on my own. He basically tells her that when he was, because he's kind of an older guy. I haven't set ages on him, but when he was a younger man in his early 20s or whatever, he was married and had a son. And everything was kind of great. But they were out in the mountains and kind of just, being by themselves. And his 4-year-old son wandered too close to a fast-moving river and got caught in the current. He says, I was right there and I jumped in after him, but I couldn't find him. I couldn't keep up with him. He was gone. I never found his body. I never got to go with him. Or he says, I wanted to go with him, my baby boy, to the afterlife so he wouldn't be alone, but I couldn't. My wife needed me, but she left me soon after that anyway. So in my rage and sadness, I fell under the influence of Skeletor. So I tried to give him a really horribly tragic backstory that would kind of justify why he became a villain. And that story of a guy losing his child to a fast-moving river happened to somebody that I actually know. This happened to him, and it fucked him up, clearly, obviously. So that kind of basic story, that tragic backstory, I give to Fisto. And so she was just holding him. She's like, oh my God, so much pain and sadness. I'm so sorry. And he's like, it's okay. It's the past. It was long ago. Long ago. She says, no wonder saving that baby today was important to you. And so in this scene, Fisto, because it's nighttime, he's pointing up to the night sky. He says to her, I'd like to think of the stars as a monument to my son, Andrew. He looks that he looks down on me from the heavens, and that he's proud of his daddy now, and I can hold my head high for him. And Andrew, I gave him the name of his dead son. That's actually the name of my youngest boy, who's alive and well. So anyway, I just wanted to give some kind of like sad backstory to the guy to explain why he kind of does what he does. And then he moves on to it. He's like, also, besides that, this giant metal fucking glove, this thing. And she's like, yeah, so what's the story with this thing? He says it's a composite of all these different highly powerful metals. But he says it's not just a weapon, it's keeping me alive. She's like, what? So he basically explains he was some time ago, he got some kind of sickness, this infection, and it's killing him. And so he's like, I can show you, but it's not pretty. So he takes the glove off, and we see what in my canon, what my universe of these He-Man characters, what his arm looks like. It's this rotting corpse of a hand. He's like, it's this disease. It's eating my flesh. The gauntlet, the metals, the combined metals, basically, he's like, it was found that they stopped the spread of the infection. So they have to encase his arm in that metal. So it became this thing that he also turned into a weapon. But he also says, but I've discovered it doesn't stop the spread of the disease. It just slows it down, like to almost to a crawl, but it doesn't stop it. It's just slowing it. He says originally it was only in my hand, but now it's like traveling up his arm. So he says, now the question is will the disease kill me before I die of old age or something else? So she's like, holy shit, I didn't know this about you. He's like, yeah, no one does. But then he says, sometimes I think this is punishment for everything I've done wrong in my life, for allowing my son to die. And so she says, well, maybe it's just bad luck and you shouldn't punish yourself. He's like, maybe. So she takes his hand, she sits on his lap, grabs his hand and holds it up to her body. Everyone likes to make jokes about this panel for various reasons you could come up with. But she got healing abilities. So she's like, I can heal things. I don't know if I've never tried something like this, but let me see what I can do. He's like, no, Shira, this won't work. You can't do this. She's like, just trust me. Just calm down. So she takes his hand, this diseased, rotting corpse of a hand, and activates her healing powers. He screams. Again, these pages are all inked by Chuck. So damn good. And then these pages are inked by me in case it happens to look a little bit less awesome. But basically, after that flash of light, he's standing up and his arm is completely healed. It's fixed. He's like, holy shit. She's like, it worked. How do you feel? And he's got tears in his eyes. He's like, I can't believe it. So they're like touching hands here. And he thanks her. You know, she's like, of course, I had no idea you were sick like this. You don't deserve to suffer. And so Fisto just keeps looking at his healed hand. He's like, I was told there was no cure. This would eventually kill me. I never thought I'd see my hand again. And so she's like, well, here, how does it feel in your healed hand to hold my sword? He's like, I'm not worthy to hold this thing. She's like, you absolutely are. So he holds the sword high in the air and he thanks her again for basically saving his life. So while that's going on, that same night, we cut to a scene in a village, silently, the same couple whose baby Fisto saved. That baby is right here, and Shadow Weaver appears. She's right there, and she's like, oh, the small child that survived the fire. So sweet, so innocent, exactly what I need. The blood of an innocent. What better way could there be? And so the parents wake up. They're like, holy shit. And Shadow Weaver's taking the child. She says, sleep, my child. You have a destiny with me. The parents scream, and Shadow Weaver says, say your goodbyes to your child, for you shall never see her again. And so I've been going an hour. I've got maybe, I don't know, a third of the way through this book. So I'm going to stop here, and on a separate video, we'll continue on with everything, with the rest of the book. And, you know, it didn't help that I took half hour explaining the backstory of everything. But basically, you can kind of see the relationship forming between She-Ra and Fisto, the former villains being heroes, the bad guys that are building up to their ultimate final confrontation, starting with Shadow Weaver kidnapping a baby, talking about using the blood of an innocent. So, what, sacrificing a baby? That's going to be a horrific thing. So anyway, I'm going to stop here with the first part of my final volume of Master's End. I hope it's been somewhat interesting for people who care. I will do part 2 and finish up the rest of the book in another video. I'm going to just record immediately after this one and go from there. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching. I would like to know what you think about this. I'm not saying I'm a great writer or a great artist or anything like that, but I'm reasonably proud of this. I'm proud that I made it and I got to say what I wanted, and I had a lot of fun with it, and we'll get into the rest of it soon. So that's all I've got for now. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.